Now, yesterday was an exciting day in the world of FPL because we got some price reveals. Here are my highlights. Now, just to summarise my overall thoughts, I think FPL have actually made it quite difficult for us all to pick a team that we're totally happy with. Now, not because they've priced everyone so expensive, you've really got to think about who you picked, but to be honest, there looks like there's so many bargains available, it's going to be hard to fit them all into your team. In my opinion, some prices have come in at just a stage where they're too good to say no to. Some are looking a little bit expensive. I've not mentioned him, but the likes of Mitrovic, for example, he's 7.5 million. I think that's just too expensive, really, to consider him. And then some players have come in too cheap, and maybe you'll see some of them in this video, so keep watching for that. Genuinely, though, it's just got us so, well, me personally at least, it's got me so excited for the game to launch. And I've heard it might be coming out on Wednesday. Now, the first team I'm going to talk about is Liverpool. We've had a number of player prices revealed from them, and here, in my opinion, are the best four. We've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, who I think has come in at literally the most expensive he's been in FPL history, and I think actually 8 million makes him at least joint the most expensive defender in FPL history. You know, the guy certainly playing in this inverted fullback role, his attacking returns really shot up towards the back end of last season for Liverpool. I think 8 million, provided he plays in that inverted fullback position, is still a good price, regardless of, you know, whether he's one of the most expensive defenders in FPL history. Another one worth mentioning, I think, is Darwin Núñez. I don't think you can pick him from the start just because we don't really know how Liverpool are going to line up. But if he does nail himself as the focal point, the centre forward in that Liverpool attack, 7.5 million for the striker starting every game for Liverpool could be amazing value. Robertson coming in at 6.5 million, I think is very well priced in comparison to Trent. You know, Robertson has a bit of threat in terms of Tsimikas for rotation, and he seems to be playing a bit further back with Trent in the more advanced, inverted fullback position. So I think 6.5 million is a fair price for Robertson in comparison to how Trent might do this season and his potential. So he's an option you could pick as well. Probably, I don't know, on face value you might say, oh, you could pick Robertson instead of Trent, but I still think at 8 million, Trent is probably the better option. And then finally, we've got the king, Mo Salah, 12.5 million. That's kind of the price I expected to see for him, really. Just with the other options in midfield available, which you'll see later on, I'm not sure I'm going to start with him, but 12.5 million is a very decent price for the upside that Salah could provide. Now, just looking at the main man himself, Erling Haaland, obviously broke the Premier League goal scoring record. We were all waiting in the wings to see how he would be priced, and he's come in at 14 million. I think 14 million is a price where, to be honest, everyone should still be picking him in their team. For me, every week he's going to play football, I'll probably be captaining him, and yeah, for that reason, 14 million, it doesn't really put me off going for him, and I think that's probably the case for most players. Honestly, the price that might be too expensive for me to be picking him is something like 16, 17 million. But for me, captaincy in FPL is so important. I'm pretty sure certainly FPL last season, 25 to 30% of my total points came off of my captaincies. It might even be higher, to be fair. So yeah, that just shows how important, nailing your captain is every week. When you got a player like this who's pretty much the strongest captain week on week, 14 million is still a good price. Now, this is one of the most interesting price brackets we've seen so far. So midfielders and forwards between sort of 7.5 and 9 million. We've had four players in particular that I think are really quite interesting. Heung-min Son is coming at 9 million. I think with the likes of Maddison now joining Tottenham and Kane, I think Kane's probably going to stay. I just think Tottenham are going to make it so hard for any team to buy him. They're just going to set the price too high. So I think Kane's got at least one more season left at Spurs. 9 million for Heung-min Son, compared to what he did last season, is a fair price. But the news has come out that he had a stomach hernia pretty much all of last season. And obviously that's going to really impact your performance. And I feel like if Son can re-find the form of a couple of seasons ago when he won the Golden Boot, 9 million is an absolute steal for him. Odegaard and Bruno Fernandes both coming in at 8.5 million. Odegaard proved he's pretty much nailed in that Arsenal team, had an exceptional season last year. Bruno Fernandes, I think the only thing really with Bruno is exactly what position he plays in that Man United team next season. With all the forward line coming back and being fit, Man United might also sign a striker. Mason Mount going into that midfield. I got a feeling Bruno's position is going to be within that midfield three. Playing a little bit deeper, is he going to get the attacking returns that he did last season when in some games he was certainly one of the most forward-facing players for Man United? I'm not too sure, but 8.5 million for Bruno Fernandes, I think it makes it really difficult not to go for him. And then Christopher Nkunku, I'm pretty sure his name's Christopher. Have to correct me on that if I'm wrong. 7.5 million for him. It's looking like he's going to be at play behind the Chelsea striker. That seems to be his most natural position, so he might be sort of like misclassed as a forward, but the stats he pulled off in the Bundesliga last season, I'm pretty sure he scored 38 goals or something like that. 7.5 million for that kind of, those kind of numbers is absolutely unreal. So he's another player I'll be considering. Just looking then at what I like to call the mid-price midfielders. We've got Eze, Mbeumo and Mitoma all coming in at 6.5 million. Eze, I think that's a good price compared to how he performed towards the back end of last season. Obviously, ripped things up under Roy Hodgson. One thing I would say about Eze is I think his link up with Elise was really strong. And I understand it, Elise's injured at the moment and might miss the start of the season. So that might have a slight impact on Eze's attacking returns. Mitoma, I feel like he obviously had a great season last year, right? He started the game at 4.5 million. He was one of the most popular players in the game towards the end. However, his returns, they just seem to dry up. And I feel like most of the points and most of the returns he got came like within that little purple patch he had post the World Cup. And then he couldn't really refine that form towards the end of the season. I mean, we'll see what happens next year. For me, I don't think I'm going to be picking him, and I'll tell you why in a second. But yeah, I'm personally not going to go for him until he refines that form. And also with Europe in play, he's probably going to start all the Premier League games to start with, right? I don't think the Europa League becomes a factor until sort of mid to late September. So obviously Mitoma is probably going to be nailed in that team for the first 5 or 6 game weeks. But the standout 6.5 million mid for me is Mbeumo. He, in my opinion, is going to be the Brentford talisman in place of Toney. I don't feel like, Brentford are in a position where they can sign a replacement for Toney. I think they're just going to have to do without him for, until January when the ban gets lifted. And when we have seen Mbeumo play in place of Toney, number one, he takes the penalties, which is obviously one of Toney's big upsides, and Mbeumo takes those off him, and I think he's got a pretty decent penalty record. And it just seems to step up his overall performance as well. The link-up he has with Wissa seems to be really good when Wissa plays up front in place of Toney. And yeah, I just think of those 3 6.5 million mids we've seen so far, and Mbeumo is the best option. I've forgotten to put on this list Morgan Gibbs-White alongside Brennan Johnson, but the 2 Forest midfielders, both priced at 6 million, I think could be good options as well. I don't think they quite make the cut to be in my first draft, but with the end of the season that Gibbs-White had, I think he made nearly 20 attacking returns last year. And Brennan Johnson being on the penalties for Nottingham Forest. I've heard some rumblings that Forest fans think they're going to become a more attacking outfit next season. Who knows? I think they're a watch and wait. But 6 million for Johnson and Gibbs-White could also be good prices. And then finally, just to look at some of the budget picks that have come out. I'm a little bit disappointed with Armadozic's price from Sheffield United. If you saw my promoted player video from a few weeks back, he was the star of like the championship defenders that have been promoted. He scored 6 goals and got 2 assists in around 30 championship games, which is a great record. And if he returned anything like that in the Premier League, he would be an unbelievable option. I was just kind of hoping he'd be 4 million. Unfortunately, he's 4.5, but I still think with the level of returns he got in the championship, he could still be a good option. He reminds me sort of the Bulldog that we had when Sheffield United first got promoted, when he was a really good option. Pick of the goalkeepers so far, we haven't had many to this point in time. Pickford at 4.5 million. I feel like under Dyche, Everton could pick things up defensively, particularly with a pre-season behind them. And obviously, Pickford has a good volume of saves. And I think when looking at a goalkeeper, for me, saves are actually more important than clean sheets. The likes of Raya, I think Raya was the top scoring goalkeeper last season. Most of his points actually came from saves rather than clean sheets. Brentford were, pretty mid-table in terms of clean sheets. But Raya made, I think, 3 or 4 saves per game. And Pickford was very similar. It was just that Everton was so much worse defensively. Obviously, is he a wait and see? I think he probably is. But if Everton turn things up defensively or look particularly solid during pre-season, I think Pickford could be a good option. And then finally, he sort of blew up Twitter yesterday. Bell for Luton. I think he's one of their starting centre-backs. He's priced at 4 million. So we actually have a player that started most games in the Championship last year, priced at 4 million. The only caveat I would say about Bell is I've heard on Twitter he's playing in I think it's the CONCACAF Gold Cup. So it's like I think it's like a South American international tournament. He's playing in that at the moment, and there's a bit of a doubt as to whether he's going to return for the first fixtures of the Premier League. So one to watch and wait on him. Is he an option just to stick in your team, even if he doesn't start the first few games, just to have a 4 million player on your bench? We'll wait and see. And that's the end of the video. Just the highlights so far, in my opinion, of the price reveals we've had so far. If you've seen any more you think are noteworthy in this video, please let me know in the comments, and also let me know if you're excited to see any other players' prices get revealed. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to the Golden Goal channel. I keep pointing in the wrong direction for that. It should be just there, and I'll see you in the next video.